she told me. Nothing happened, but I found a calendar with her name and his circled dates. It was one of those stupid, random things that shouldn't have meant anything. I wasn't even looking for it. Honestly, I wasn't. But when I reached into the back of her drawer to grab a pen, the calendar slid out from behind a pile of old receipts, and there it was, unmistakable. Her name, written in bold red marker with several dates circled. They weren't just any dates. They were dates that lined up perfectly with the time she had been working late or out with friends. My heart started beating faster. I almost dropped the calendar, but I steadied myself, scanning the dates. Every single one matched up with things she'd told me. She'd been vague about it, sure, but in my gut, I knew something wasn't right. I didn't even think about it in the moment, didn't ask myself whether I should have confronted her right then and there. The anger surged, the hurt, the confusion. It all welled up in me at once. I set the calendar down, my hands shaking, and thought for a second about walking away. But I couldn't. I couldn't just forget this. Not now. Not after everything. I grabbed my phone instead, fingers hovering over the screen as I tried to come up with the right words. I texted her, "I need to talk when you get home." That was it. I didn't want to accuse her outright. Not yet. I didn't want to fly off the handle, but the feeling inside me was growing uncontrollable. I was seconds away from bursting. She was going to come home soon, and I was going to have to figure out what to say. I tried to breathe, to calm myself, but it felt impossible. The air in the room was thick with the weight of my own thoughts. The dates on the calendar weren't just dates, they were proof. Proof that she'd been seeing him. She'd lied. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I wasn't just angry. I was devastated. I didn't even know who she was anymore. I had trusted her. I had believed her when she said it was all just work stress, or that she needed space, or that she was just seeing friends. But this calendar, these dates, it was all pointing to something else entirely. The front door clicked open, and I snapped back to reality. She was home. "Hey," she said, her voice light as she stepped inside. She didn't seem to notice the tension in the room. She didn't seem to notice the way I was staring at her, my chest tight, my heart beating faster as I stood there holding the calendar. I didn't wait for her to say anything more. I held the calendar up, my hands trembling. "What's this?" I asked, my voice lower than I meant it to be. She froze, her eyes wide for a second before her gaze shifted away, darting to the side as if trying to find a way out of the moment. "What are you talking about?" she asked, but I could already hear the edge in her voice. The defensive tone I hated. I shoved the calendar toward her, the red circles glaring at her like accusations. "These dates, what are these for?" Her face paled. I saw her swallow, her eyes flickering back and forth between the calendar and my face. "Nothing happened," she said quickly, as if those words alone would erase everything. She paused, trying to find the words, but they felt too rehearsed, too practiced. "I told you, those are just for work. I told you about that event I was planning. It's nothing. I swear." I almost laughed. I wanted to scream, but I stayed quiet. Her eyes were pleading with me, but all I could hear was the pounding of my heart in my ears, telling me that everything she said was a lie. I had already heard it all before. Her promises, her reassurances, and now, here I was, holding the evidence of her deception. "I don't know what you want me to say, Jake," she continued, her voice a little more fragile now. "I don't want to hurt you, but this is nothing. Please don't make this into something it's not." The whole time she spoke, I could feel my chest tightening. My mind was screaming at me, trying to connect the dots that were scattered across the room, but I couldn't get a clear picture. "Nothing happened," I repeated, my voice shaking now. "Then why are these as dates? Why are you so careful about hiding them, about telling me you're working late when you're not? Tell me you're not seeing someone else. Tell me that," I said, my voice louder now, louder than I had intended. But I couldn't stop it. Her face crumpled for a second, her eyes welling up. She didn't answer right away, and that silence spoke volumes. My stomach churned, my fists clenched. "I didn't want to hurt you," she whispered, her voice barely audible, like she was barely holding it together. "I swear I didn't. It wasn't supposed to happen this way." I shook my head. "Not supposed to happen this way?" The words didn't make sense. It was like she was trying to rewrite the story, to make her lies sound less like lies and more like something understandable, something forgivable. But nothing about this was forgivable. Who is he? I asked, my voice quieter now, almost dead inside. She looked away, biting her lip, her hands trembling. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. I waited, hoping she would just come clean, hoping the truth would finally spill out of her. Finally, she spoke, almost too softly to hear. His name is Ben. He's someone I met at work. And I didn't want you to know. I didn't want to hurt you. I thought it would just go away, but it didn't. The words hit me like a punch. Ben. He was someone from work. Someone she'd been spending time with. Someone she'd been hiding from me. So, you've been lying to me, I said, barely able to get the words out. You've been lying about where you are, about what you're doing, about us. And for what? For him. She burst into tears at that, shaking her head like she couldn't believe I would say it out loud. No, it wasn't like that. It wasn't about him. It wasn't about you either. She wiped her eyes furiously, trying to pull herself together. I've just been confused, okay? I've been trying to figure things out. I didn't want to hurt you, but I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know how to tell you that I was feeling distant. Distant? Distant? She had been seeing another man behind my back. She had been hiding it from me for months. The lies were eating me alive, and the worst part was that I didn't know who she was anymore. I can't believe this, I said, stepping back. You didn't just tell me, you hid it from me. You planned trips, you lied about where you were going, and you thought you could get away with it. The words tasted bitter, and my throat felt tight as I forced them out. I didn't think I could fix it, Jake. I didn't think I could fix us. She was crying harder now, and I almost felt like I should comfort her. Almost. But then I remembered everything she had done. Every lie. Every excuse. You don't get to fix this, I said, shaking my head. Not after everything. Not after all the shit you've put me through. The room was silent for a long time. I could hear her breathing, trying to steady herself, but I was too far gone. I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. She was right about one thing. I didn't know how to fix this. I didn't know if there was any fixing it. And in that moment, it hit me. I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't keep chasing a version of her that wasn't real. I couldn't keep hoping for something that wasn't coming back. It was over. She reached out toward me, but I stepped back. Jake, please, she started, her voice breaking, but I couldn't hear her. I couldn't stand to hear her anymore. I need you to leave, I said, the words feeling foreign, like they were coming from someone else. Just go. I don't know how long I stood there after she left. It felt like hours. The house was so quiet, so empty. And all I could think about was how she had looked me in the eye and lied. She had lied. Part 2. I don't know how long I stood there after she left, but it felt like I was stuck in some sort of limbo. The quiet in the apartment was deafening, the absence of her presence louder than any argument we'd ever had. It was as if the space between us had grown so large, so unfathomable, that even the air felt different. I was standing in the same room, but I wasn't sure I belonged there anymore. I could hear her car engine start, the sound of the tires crunching over the gravel as she drove away. It wasn't like in the movies where there's some dramatic soundtrack playing in the background, some swell of music to emphasize the gravity of the situation. It was just me and the silence. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I ignored it. It wasn't her. It wouldn't be her apologizing or asking if we could talk. I already knew what the messages would say. Please, Jake. I didn't mean for this to happen. I'm so sorry. Let's talk. And I couldn't do it. Not now. Not after everything. I walked around the apartment like a ghost, unsure of what to do with my hands, with my body. I picked up a book from the coffee table, stared at it for a moment, then set it back down. I tried to drink some water, but it tasted like cardboard in my mouth. Nothing felt right. I didn't want to be here. Not in this apartment. Not with the memories of her so fresh, still lingering in the air and the walls. But I couldn't leave, either. I didn't know where I'd go. I had nowhere else to be. I grabbed my jacket and left. The streets felt colder than usual, the night air sharp against my skin. I didn't have a destination in mind. I just needed to move, to get some space, to escape this suffocating reality of it all. My mind was still reeling, flipping through the moments she'd lied to me, the times I'd trusted her, The conversations where she'd assured me everything was fine, that she loved me, that there was no one else. How could I have been so stupid? I ended up at the same bar I'd gone to a few weeks ago when I needed to clear my head. The place was a bit of a dive, dim lighting, worn-out stools, and a jukebox that played songs from 10 years ago. It was empty except for a couple of regulars hunched over their drinks at the far end of the bar. I sat down in an empty spot, motioning to the bartender to bring me something strong. She didn't respond to my text. I already knew she wouldn't, but it still stung. I tried to distract myself by scrolling mindlessly through my phone, checking messages, reading the news, but nothing made sense. Nothing felt real. Then I saw it. A message from my sister. "Hey, are you okay? I know things have been rough with Rachel. You haven't been answering, and I'm worried. Call me when you can." I stared at the message for a long time, the words blurring together as the haze of alcohol and confusion took over. My sister had known things were off, had known before I even fully admitted it to myself. She had been there when I tried to make excuses for Rachel's behavior, when I brushed off the things that didn't sit right. And now here I was, sitting alone in a bar, my world falling apart piece by piece, and she was the only one who seemed to give a damn. I typed out a response quickly, my fingers moving without thinking. I don't know what to do anymore. She's gone. I found out she's been seeing someone else. She's been lying to me this whole time. I didn't want to tell her, but I needed to say it out loud. I needed to admit it to someone. My sister replied almost immediately. "Jake, I'm so sorry. I had a feeling something was going on. I'm here for you. I really am." I closed my eyes and leaned back in the chair. It was nice to hear that someone cared, but it didn't change the fact that my whole world had been turned upside down. I didn't know how to move forward. I didn't know how to pick up the pieces of my life after Rachel had ripped it all apart. But in that moment, I realized something. I couldn't keep trying to fix something that was broken beyond repair. No matter how much I wanted to, no matter how much I loved her, I couldn't pretend that everything was okay. And that's when it hit me. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal. It wasn't the lies. It wasn't even the fact that she had been seeing someone else. The hardest part was that I had spent so long trying to ignore the cracks in our relationship, convincing myself that things were fine, that I didn't have to confront the truth. I had let myself be blinded by the hope of a future that wasn't even real. The bartender brought me another drink, but I didn't touch it. Instead, I sat there, numb, staring at the neon sign outside the window, flickering in the darkness. I didn't know what was coming next. I didn't know how to move forward. But I knew one thing. I couldn't keep going back to the person who had broken me. I couldn't keep looking for the person I thought she was, because she wasn't that person anymore. And I couldn't keep living in the past. The door to the bar opened. I didn't look up at first, but I heard the sound of footsteps approach. A voice, familiar but distant, called my name. "Jake, you here?" I turned, and there she was. My ex. I hadn't expected to see her tonight, or at all. She'd reached out a few times since we'd broken up, trying to check in, but I hadn't answered. I didn't know what to say. But now she was here, standing in front of me, looking the same as she always did. Same smile, same eyes, same kindness. The same girl I had fallen for years ago. I stood up and greeted her with a forced smile. She had no idea what had just happened, of course. She didn't know the whole story. But I didn't want to get into it now. Not tonight. "Can I sit down?" she asked, already taking the empty stool next to me. I nodded, my mind still reeling. She didn't say anything right away, and I was thankful for the silence. She looked over at the bartender, then back at me, her gaze softening as she noticed something in my eyes. "You look like you've been through hell," she said quietly. I let out a small, humorless laugh. I feel like it. I didn't tell her about Rachel. I didn't tell her about the lies, about the betrayal. I didn't want to get into it. But I felt a shift inside of me, a glimmer of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Like maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward. Not with Rachel, but for me. The night dragged on, and I don't remember when exactly I decided to leave the bar. It wasn't some grand epiphany, but as I stepped out into the cold air, I felt it, a subtle shift, a tiny flicker of hope in the distance. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know where I'd go from here, or who I'd be. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let her define my worth anymore. I wasn't going to live in the shadow of her lies. And maybe, just maybe, I was ready to find out who I was without her.